They used the last football game. Hi. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
I was, but he had
Nice to meet you, I'm Joe.
Good to meet you, Joe.
One of our buddies.
What's that? Benny, is anybody sitting here?
You're welcome to sit down. I don't mind your company.
All right.
You help yourself.
You know I want you to use it.
Yeah. I don't like you.
It might be starting pretty soon.
Yeah.
And nobody likes to sit in front of you.
no. I'm not. Yeah, they're too close or something. I want to be there.
So now there's this guy, what's his name?
Like what? Did he do something?
This is the worst thing.
How you guys doing? How are you? Good. You? Good to see you. You too. Sit down here. Say a seat.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
There's the good one. There's the one.
How are you going then?
Did it what? No, I didn't. Every once in a
Everyone's about to die. That's when we use the slide.
I need to, but I need not to. You know what it is? Oh, yeah. I just had supper and so I'm
Oh,
covered.
well, you already covered that, huh?
Yeah. Oh, good. And, I've probably eaten my share of goodies today already.
Yeah. When I'm working, I'm usually snipping some of the goodies too.
Yeah, today was my day off volunteering. I played pickleball and went and worked out after that.
Perpetually late situation.
But I got the bad news.
Supposed to come learn about this landscaping stuff for her new role.
I paid $10 a time.
Board sponsor for the landscaping committee, which
Oh, good. Yeah.
When it's going on, you don't have to pay.
When it's going on, I have to pay for leave.
right.
That's so real though. ChatGPT.
You're playing games on the phone.
More than 150. 3 years. I was a member of the
Well, yeah, but you're not paying her.
Well, that's a senior non-resident. I live in a lot.
Oh, that's what we did.
Yeah. Like I said, I used to go there and swim.
Yeah.
The vegetative filter strip. I kind of tasted that in my college days, a million years ago.
Well, it's
Vegetative.
very extremely cheap. But then I've got a gym with health insurance. I go old ball in the mainland.
There's the things.
It's not the first time I worked out over here. I hadn't joined them.
Copy of the mic?
All of them. Oh, the city center.
Yeah.
England City
It's
Center.
really pretty.
World Gym. My health insurance provides that. Last December, they didn't make it out.
This is
My
AJ
health
City.
insurance changed. Now they got the one I had before.
You made some.
I
I turned it off.
This is really tough.
Yeah, I had one of those.
Do some improvements.
Somehow I got those done over some technical issue, had an arm
No kidding.
microphone, speaker.
I wish.
If we do, I want to be on there.
No kidding. Ray too.
In my test, when they used statistics, and they rounded that down to 1%. So the other two sides.
May I have everyone's attention, please? Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to attend this program. We have a fantastic program in front of us today, and I'd like to thank especially the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Services for being here this evening. And I want to take a little bit of time to introduce our team. And so first we have Selena Lowry, Watershed Program Specialist with Texas A&M AgriLife. Therese York, Program Director. If you want to stand, that'd be great. Suad Jabber, Professor and Extension Specialist for the Biological and Agricultural Engineering Department. And Grant Huber from Askakura Robinson, our Grant's right here. Oh, right here. Our architect for this project?
Yes,
Yes.
landscape architect.
Yeah, landscape architect. So, Scott Jones?
I'm Roger.
There you are. From Texas A&M also. Christy Taylor, she's a wetland specialist, and we have a bunch of student interns with us from that program also with us this evening. And tonight we have Mary Chris Armcost. Please stand for thank you. Arnie Cross, the Development Director. Debbie Nesbitt, our City Secretary. Stacy Baker, our Community Development Specialist. And I want to turn it over to Selena. Great. We've been working together for the past few months, and we're really excited about this program. And I'm glad she's here to explain it this evening. So have you enjoy it.
Okay. So, hello everyone. If you are sitting in your chair wondering what green infrastructure is, what it looks like, how it works, that's great because this evening is diving into that subject. My name is Selena Lowry. I work for A&M AgriLife Extension, and you may be familiar with your county extension office here in Galveston County. It's right up the road, 519 Main Street at Carbide Park in Lamarck. I see some eyes. At that office, they do various programs, 4-H, Master Gardener, Master Naturalist. Our team is actually located just slightly further up 45 from here. We're in the Clear Lake area, and our office is called Texas Community Watershed Partners. I'm on a team called Green Infrastructure for Texas, and we work with different organizations, including municipalities, counties, and we work with them as they are developing or redeveloping their landscapes to look at how the rainwater flows over their land and if there are nature-based alternatives that they can use in their ordinances, that they can put on the ground. And again, more detail on some of those practices are with the presentations that come up next. So why are we here tonight and why are we here in Hitchcock? This workshop is actually part of a larger effort. We've been working with the city over a couple years now to, at first, propose this project with the Texas General Land Office Coastal Management Program. And it was a competitive grant. We were able to secure that funding, and so this workshop is just one small piece. The big piece of this project is 3 on-the-ground installations that the city will be doing in their parks. And right now we're in the design phase. So I'll get back to that in a minute. So Hitchcock City Parks, how many of you guys live in the city of Hitchcock or are familiar with either of these parks? Okay, so we're talking about Joe Moore Park and Hitchcock City Park. These pictures are showing a portion of the parks as they look during a rain event. So as you can see, there's a lot of water on the property. You know, that has a lot to do with a few different things. We live in a very flat area, for one. I know we feel very close to Houston, but if you look in the other direction, we're really close to the Gulf of Mexico. So a lot of the city is actually in the floodplain, and there's just a lot of water, a lot of rainfall in our region. So these pictures, if you're familiar with the parks, are all along the edge. The Joe Moore Park pictures are along Burns, and the Hitchcock City Park pictures are along Robinson Road. And this is because as the city continues to improve upon those parks and does future efforts within them, we wanted to make sure that the projects have the longevity, they're still there, and they're kind of, that's one reason for locating them toward the edge, so they stay outside of those future plans that the city's been looking forward to. The next part of that is just working with the natural topography and trying to put these practices where the rainfall is actually flowing over the landscape. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I wanna make sure I don't forget anything. Just wanna look. Okay. For this project, it's more than just on-the-ground installations. It's this workshop, but also in the spring, as we do those installations on the ground, we will have a planting event and we'll have a field day associated with that. The practices will also have educational signage so that teachers, other people in the community, our office even perhaps, can continue to visit the sites, bring people to them, and people can continue to use it as an education. So again, we're here today. Another reason we're here today is because we have conceptual designs in the back of the room behind you guys. There are 2 concept maps, one for each park, and those were put together by Azakira Robinson, so that is, the grant is a big part of that effort. And this is a first step toward getting those things on the ground. So first we have to see what we're looking at. The next step is to look in more detail and decide if this, look at the construction documents and really look at what's going on the ground with more detail. So there are some Post-it notes and pens back there if toward the end of the event you're looking at those and you have any comments about the flowers that you see, about the placement of these things. We'd love to have a little bit of your feedback if you want to give it. Okay. We could plant these things in the fall, but we're planting them in the spring. And we're doing that because since this is a grant-funded project, it has to be reviewed before we can actually do any of the on-the-ground installation. So that's where that lag's coming from. We're thinking it's going to be about March or April to do the installations. Oh man. All right. Okay. And this slide's also supposed to help me remember. We have a resource table on that side of the room where there is a sign up for that planting event if you want to be notified before we have it. There's also some other publications. And behind me, if you haven't already noticed, there's several plants. Those have been donated by Jimbo's Nursery. That's in the Santa Fe area. It's really just right down the street from here. They were kind enough to donate those for us. And so that is what our door prizes are for tonight. So we have 3 plants to share with you guys. All right, so The first one that we're gonna draw is that bowl outside.
It's right here.
Okay. The first one that we're gonna draw is the smallest of the three. It's the Texas coneflower. Sharis, if anybody's interested, since y'all are raffling this thing, Sharis can share a little bit about the coneflower for you guys.
Yeah, so the coneflower is a type of sunflower. It will put out, so it'll stay over winter like this with the leaves, and next year it will shoot up the longer stalks with some purple flowers. Echinacea is another name for it. So it likes a nice sunny spot, kind of moderately drained soil, but it'll grow well around here. So this is a beautiful purple sunflower.
I'm gonna have you go ahead and draw if you don't mind. And if you wanna tell us, should I? Oh, just one. It's 3260.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm 6'5".
It's you? Okay.
All right.
It's flipped in. Oh, my.
So we can't just leave it up here for you till the end.
I'm sure.
Alright, so before I move on, since I'm talking a lot about the city, but I don't work for the city of Hitchcock, is there anything else that you guys would like to say about the project, or? Okay. So at this time, I'd like to hand it over to my team lead. Her name is Sharis York. Is that all right?
Good evening. So I apparently am also the flower describer for the evening. So thanks, Selena. As she mentioned, my name is Sharis York. I also work for the A&M AgriLife Extension Service like Selena. I live here in Galveston County. I think I've been here for almost 20 years now. So my job tonight is to talk to you guys a little bit about the what and the why for these landscaping practices. Why might we want to think about collecting rainwater? And what's the purpose of that? And then what does that look like? So Fuad will come after me and he'll talk a lot more about the specifics of how the practices work and how you might install them in your landscapes. But I'm gonna kind of set the stage for that a little bit and also try to show you some local examples of where we're using these practices in Galveston County and Harris County, places right down the road from us. And then also some of the flowers and plants that we might want to use in these landscapes. So this is an excellent example of what, just realized the people on the TV can't see what I'm doing. But then there's plants in the corner. So we have some examples of the types of plants that you might want to pick up too. So Selena mentioned our resource table. I'll go ahead and mention we have a couple of plant lists over there specifically that you might want to pick up. And we also have a resource guide. Where can you find those plants? What types of nurseries are around? In addition to Jimbo's, where else can you get some of those plants? So we'll make sure you stop by there on the way out. So I'm really going to focus on three concepts here. We're going to talk about the why, right? Water conservation, why we might want to conserve the water or protect the water that we have. Water quality, what does the water quality look like in places like Highland Bayou and Marchand Bayou and those bayous that are right here where we live. And then we'll talk about habitat for wildlife. So these are basically our whys. So for each one of these, we'll get into depth a little bit about what that means, what's going on, and why it might be of concern. We'll talk about some of the specific practices that can address that specific why. And then at the end, we'll circle back to some of the plants. So let's start with water conservation. So in Texas, every 5 years, the Texas Water Development Board, here we go, almost said the wrong organization. The Texas Water Development Board puts together a water plan, and they look at the water needs for all of Texas. They look at what we have available to us, what population is coming to the state, where in the state they are, and what they project out the water usage for the next 50 years. And they break it down into about 10-year cycles. So first they look for all of the state, but they also have the state broken down into regions, and then they deep dive for each region in Texas about what those water needs look like. So the most recent plan was put out in 2022. So we're about 2.5 years, right, about halfway through that water plan. So they're actually kind of starting to work on the next one, so it will come out in 5 years. But this is the most recent data that we have. So here at the top, what we're looking at is a chart that shows from 2020, 2030, all the way up to 2070, how much water is being, is projected to be needed in various categories. So I want to draw your attention to this number right here. So we're looking at the municipal water usage, and they're suggesting over the next 50 years, we're going to have an increased need of 1,362% increase in municipal water needs. Now, can we really make new potable water? I mean, if we want to invest in desalinization or something like that, we could and spend millions and millions of dollars. But it only rains how much it rains, right? We only have a certain amount of water available to use. And municipal water includes the water we use in our cities, right? So that's the water that we're drinking, that we're showering, that we're flushing our toilets with, that we're filling our swimming pools with, that we're watering our yards with, cleaning water to the point where we can drink it and then literally dumping it onto the ground. So, Region H, this is the Houston-Galveston region, so this is where we live. So we're looking again from 2020 to 2070. And so on this graph, I'm going to point your attention to the red bar, which is the potential shortages. So here we are, 2020, basically meeting our water needs. But as we move forward, you can see this red bar gets higher and higher and higher. So as we see development here locally, as more people come to the region, it makes sense that we would need more water to support them, right? But we can't bring more water, so what are we going to do? And I would suggest that water conservation is a good way to help meet these needs. If we are using less water, then we can meet our needs. And there are ways to do that with our landscaping. You do not need water that is clean enough to drink to water your plants. There's other ways to get that, such as rainwater. So, there's a lot of local examples of how you can collect and store rainwater. You can cheat on this question, but do you guys recognize where this is? Say it out loud.
Yep.
Tanger Outlet Mall. So it does say that in the corner, but also this is Tanger Outlet Mall, right? Right up the road, not far from here. They have these massive cisterns. Have you guys, any of you noticed these when you're driving along?
I have not.
Yeah, so they are. If you're walking in by the stores, you can't see them, but if you're parked in the parking lot, the next time you're there, there's at least 4 of them kind of stationed all around the outside of the outlet mall by the parking. They've done a pretty good job of camouflaging them. As the vegetation grows, they're a little bit harder to find. But these are massive. I think they hold 5,000 plus 10,000?
I would think that's 15,000.
Yeah, probably 10 to 15,000 gallons, and they're collecting water off the roof of the outlet mall, and they're using that to water their vegetation. So this is a great example of how even in a commercial setting, it's possible to collect this water and to use it. Let's see, this is in Galveston at Moody Gardens. I wander around when I go visit places, and sometimes I do things like take pictures of the maintenance buildings. So this is actually a maintenance building. That's why it's not the prettiest of water tanks. It's just plastic, but it gets the job done, and it's collecting water off the roof. I don't know exactly what they're using it for, but no matter how large or small, we can find a tank that is sized properly to be able to collect that water and use it. Whiskey Cakes. This is by Baker Hall. So kind of a, what do you call it, a fancy restaurant, but it's, okay, let's keep moving. This is up by Baker Mall. So yeah, right by the mall, you've got these rainwater harvesting tanks. So at these commercial venues, they're collecting and using this rainwater. These things can also very easily, I didn't bring any pictures of home rain garden and rain barrel installations. Yeah.
I thought they were imitating a still.
They might be, but they're also rain barrels. I mean, multi-purpose, right?
I
It
didn't
fits
know they
with,
were functional.
yeah, they are. It fits the look of it, but they also, you can't see them in this picture, but they're connected there, and you can see the pipes that collect the water. So, it's a good way to fit the look into your design of your restaurant, right? Some pretty good landscape architecture work there. But these things can be used at your home. They can be sized to collect water from the downspouts and from your roof. You can go anywhere from something small like a 50-gallon rain barrel, all the way up to a couple thousand gallons, depending on the size of your house, the number of downspouts that you have, all of those. And so again, these are a way to collect that water that's running off the roof of your house, to store it and use it another day, and help save that water. The drinking water for doing things like drinking and taking showers where we need that clean water for. Okay. So water quality. In this case, we're going to move away from drinking water. We're not going to talk about the water we're drinking. We're talking about surface water quality. So that's the water in our streams and our creeks and our bayous and Galveston Bay. So in the state of Texas, it's the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board who are tasked with keeping track of the quality of our surface waters. And so they do that through an intensive monitoring program where people go out and they take water samples. They work with a number of partners across the state to take samples of that water and to test it for various chemicals and pollutants and things, and to keep track of what that water looks like. So TCEQ has this map available on their website. They call it their Surface Water Quality Viewer. So anyone can go on the TCEQ website and see this exact map that I have up here. So what we're looking at here is a map of all of the surface waters in Texas. So we're here, right, in Hitchcock today. And this just shows where it is. We see a lot of water here in the Bayou City, right? As we move to West Texas, a lot less water. Kind of what you expect to see. Well, let's change that view a little bit. Now, those red lines represent water bodies that TCEQ considers to be impaired. That means they do not meet their designated use. You could think of them as being polluted. So, that's a lot of red lines on that map. Bayou City, a lot of red lines. Down here, a lot of red lines. We're standing in the Highland Bayou watershed. Highland Bayou is one of the red lines on this map. Has high levels of fecal coliform bacteria, low levels of dissolved oxygen in the main parts of the main channel and in some of the tributaries. So we are not meeting the designated use. So we actually, a number of stakeholders got together and wrote a watershed protection plan, which is a series of activities that folks are working to undertake to help improve the water quality in that local bayou. And actually, part of the reason why they were able to obtain these grant funds is because these types of projects help support that watershed protection plan. So when we say they're polluted and there's runoff and there's, what does all of this mean, Charis? Well, there's sort of four main types of runoff pollution that we're looking at when they're sampling those waters and they're looking at the quality of those waters. So we're looking at pathogens and bacteria, nutrients, things like nitrogen and phosphorus, also sediment and debris. Debris is just a fancy word for trash. So specifically what do these mean? Well, how do these things get to the water? Where do they come from and how do they get into places like Highland Bayou? So they're actually a cumulative result of our everyday actions. There are small decisions that we each make every day that have an impact on the world around us. And those can be positive decisions or they can be negative decisions. And not that you're waking up trying to make negative decisions, but sometimes our uninformed decisions can have unintended consequences. So let's think about the types of pollutants. I said pathogens and bacteria. Well, Highland Bayou has high levels of fecal coliform bacteria. Do you want to guess where that bacteria comes from with the name fecal coliform? Animal poop? Yeah. Excrement. Ooh, I like that. Someone picked the nice word for poop. Excrement. It's not poop. So things like, sweet little puppies. Do they go to the bathroom and the toilet? Where do they go to the bathroom?
And on the floor.
On the floor, everywhere, outside. They're indiscriminate. They don't care. What happens when they go in the backyard? Well, either one, hopefully you pick it up, but if you don't, the next time it rains, that water is going to wash that excrement down into our storm drains, through the ditches, and into our creeks and our bayous. And so it applies to all animals, including us, right? We are warm-blooded mammals. Fecal coliform grows in our gastrointestinal system as well. And so depending on if you have a septic system, is it getting pumped out? Is it getting cleaned? Is that working properly? And then also even our sanitary sewers in our cities. Are our lift stations working properly? Are the pipes conveying that waste the way they're supposed to? When we lose power, are our lift stations still moving the effluent to where it needs to go? All of those are opportunities for that bacteria to find its way out of the pipes, out of where it's supposed to be, and into our bayous and our streams. Okay, nutrients. So in this case, we're talking about things like nitrogen and phosphorus, which are like sharks. Plants like nitrogen and phosphorus, right? It's when we put fertilizer down, we want to make them grow. Well, in the right amount, those things are good for the plants, but more isn't always better. And actually, on a per acre basis, homeowners use more chemical fertilizers and pesticides than agricultural producers. Some of that is because ag producers are always watching the bottom line, right? They're trying to make money, they're trying to support their farm, and they're watching every penny that they put out because they have to bring that revenue back. They also, many of them are stewards of the land. They've lived there for years and years, and they're trying to protect that resource. Kind of the flip side of that is, if you live in a neighborhood, there's usually a lot of competition about who has the greenest lawn, whose looks best. It's also really easy to walk down to the big box store and buy that bag of stuff and just throw it out on the lawn, right? But have you done a soil test? Have you looked to see if you even need to add nitrogen and phosphorus? Will that help at all? Because spending money to add things that the plants can't use isn't beneficial. It's just going to run off into our streams. And it becomes an issue because we're feeding the vegetation that's in the streams as well. So high amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus can cause algal blooms, right? The algae is like, ooh, grow. Sucks up all the oxygen out of the water when no, that's not right. It creates oxygen when it grows, there we go. When it dies, then it decomposes and it crashes the oxygen level in the water. What in the water need oxygen? Fish, all of the life needs it to keep living. So things, even like what we're putting on our lawn, can have a direct impact on our local waterways. Sediment. So in this case, sometimes it has to do with our construction practices, or we're using proper silt fences and ways to keep that loose soil on the site during construction. Also, as we continue to grow, we tend to look to our naturally occurring streams as part of our drainage system, right? We're getting the water off our lawns, off our streets, we're putting it into channels that already exist. Well, if we're increasing the flow, we're also increasing the likelihood of erosion on those stream banks because we're changing the flow patterns, how much water is in there. Around here when it rains, does it always rain a nice, gentle, even rain? No. It likes to rain a bunch and then none, a bunch and then none. And we have those big surges down our creeks. If we're putting a lot more water in them than they're naturally having, we're opening the door for erosion. This is also partly a problem because that bacteria doesn't like to exist by its own. It likes to hang on to other things. It can live longer. And so in the areas where there's more sediments and more things for it to hang on to, it can actually live longer. And then finally, trash and debris. It's just horrible because it's so hard to find a trash can, right? We still have Trash Bash every year where we go out and we're picking up trash. We have all of these fantastic things like large trash day, and still folks will just dump their trash wherever they want to. And we need to keep redoubling those efforts to get that trash where it needs to go and have it not be in our waterways. So just to be clear about how those pollutants are getting from your house to the stream, it's actually a pretty direct path. That water is going to flow off your house and off your driveway into the road. Our roads are intended to be part of the conveyance system, right? The water flows into them, into our storm drains, into our ditches and our creeks, and then directly into our bayous and streams. You'll notice there is no treatment plant in this path, right? There's no chance to take that water and to clean it up. So whatever it picks up along the way, it's going to deposit directly into those surface waters and impact that water quality. So one of the things, there's many things, but one of the things and the focus of this workshop tonight is this green stormwater infrastructure. How can we take that water and actually clean it up before it goes into our bayous and creeks? Well, green stormwater infrastructure is an approach to land development or redevelopment that works with nature, and we want to manage stormwater or rainwater as close to its source as possible. So where that water falls, can we hold on to it, slow it down, get it to soak into the ground? Because in the ground are tons of naturally occurring microbes that actually have the ability to break down a lot of those pollutants. So there's a lot of different names that sometimes green infrastructure goes by: low impact development, blue-green infrastructure. Any of these terms are going to all be talking about very similar things to what we're talking about tonight. Using nature in our landscapes to slow that water down, soak it into the ground, and clean it up a bit. So in this case, we're changing the dynamic of what that flow path looks like. So the water, instead of going directly into our streets, if we can channel it into something like a rain garden, we can slow that water down, soak it into the soil. We can actually use that soil as a filter, and we can clean the water. We're putting in a natural filtration system before that water goes to our storm drains, our ditches, and our streams. So in essence, we're creating a treatment plant for that stormwater, but it's awfully pretty along the way. So the goal is to use these natural practices to slow the water down, spread the water out, and soak it into the ground. So here's a couple of examples of where we're doing some of these practices here locally. So this is in Lake City. It's at the Girardi Family Water Sport Park, which is off of Louisiana Avenue. And so this is called a swale. So a swale is an open channel that's intended to move water from one location to another. So in this case, standing on the sidewalk, taking a picture back up this way, and you can see it's raining. I like to take pictures of the rain, by the way. So the water is actually moving this way through the park, under the sidewalk, and then into the storm drain. So there's actually research that show that open channels like this have less likelihood of breeding mosquitoes than closed pipes. Some of it has to do with the fact that the water can evapotranspirate. Some of it has to do with the UV light from the sun that can actually kill off some of the things in there. But this is an option. Instead of always putting the water into a pipe, we can look at ways to use our landscaping and to leave that water out. I don't have a dry picture of this for you today, but the other thing about this is not very deep. It's very shallow, so you can still mow this with a regular lawnmower. You don't have to bring in any special equipment or anything. You can just drive over this with the lawnmower and maintain that grass. So this is an example of a rain garden. Fuad's going to talk about these a lot more. And there's some examples of rain gardens in the back, what we're hoping to do here in Hitchcock. But in this case, this garden is taking water from a parking lot. So we've created what's called a curb cut. So the water, the parking lot is actually graded for the water to go into the rain garden. So a rain garden is a shallow, bowl-shaped depression. So we're actually encouraging the water to go in. So it's planted with native vegetation that likes it to be wet, that can handle a wet, dry cycle like that. And then again, when we build these, we add compost. So we're really building up that healthy soil community. So we have that treatment plant in the ground. We have those naturally occurring microbes that can start to break things down. Okay, here's another rain garden. This one is at the University of Houston Clear Lake, outside of their Environmental Institute of Houston. So in this case, there's actually a rainwater harvesting tank back here in the corner. But here's another example of a rain garden. So rain gardens can come in lots of different sizes. They can be large, they can be small, depends on how much water is flowing into them. And what type of plants do you like? So this one has more trees than the other one did. They wanted trees and shrubs in here, but again, these are plants that like the wet. They can handle the wet. But the key is they also have to be able to handle the dry, because a rain garden should not hold water for more than 24 to 48 hours, so they're gonna have a wet-dry cycle. What else? Okay, so here we are, Bay Area Boulevard. This is Black Rock Coffee Company. I'm telling you guys, anytime I'm out in town, I'm just like taking pictures of everyone's working lot. So this has what's called pervious pavement. So in this case, it's actually designed so that the water can go down. In this case, they're using pervious pavement because there's this really nice tree here, and they didn't want to pave over the root system. But this allows the water to actually go through the concrete instead of running off like it would a regular concrete lot. And there's lots of different ways that this can look. And so this is a rain garden at Heritage Park in Lake City. This rain garden has been in the ground for about 15 years now. So people lots of times see pictures of rain gardens when they're first put in. Everybody wants to take pictures of them, but they're like, sure, what's the longevity of these? What does it look like? So here it is, you know, here's a cypress tree, there's some palmettos, and there some other, and there's Turk's cap in here, there's some mulberries that started growing in here. But this is a garden that's been in the ground for, like I said, 15 years now. Fuad helped us design and install this one. So if any of you guys were around, some of you volunteers, when Chris LaChance was here, she helped us. This was one of her projects. But so many times we see so many pictures of the gardens when they first go in. People don't think to go back and to take pictures of what they look like later. So I really like to put this picture in. This is really what a mature garden looks like. This is not far from, it's an offshoot of Clear Creek back here. So this has flooded several times, including during Hurricane Harvey and some of our other flood events. It is in a park owned by the city of Lake City, and they're the ones who are responsible for the maintenance of it and the upkeep of the garden. So there are some things that maybe aren't perfect, a little straight edge on some of those shrubs, maybe not as natural as we might like them to be, but not a whole lot to complain about, I would say, from the maintenance side. It's a pretty good looking rain garden here, 15 years in. Okay, so I told you we were going to talk about water conservation, about water quality, and so now let's talk about homes for wildlife. All of the vegetation we're talking about here is really focused on native vegetation. Those plants that like to grow here, because they're going to do well here. They've been here longer than we have. They don't need the chemical fertilizers and pesticides because they're part of the ecosystem. They have grown and developed here in such a way that the bugs that live here have a role. You know, some of them use the bugs use the plants for homes over the winter. Things like the monarch caterpillars eat the milkweed, right? And it provides homes for them. They have these symbiotic relationships. And so when you have the right plants and you're not worried about putting chemical fertilizers and pesticides out there, you allow these ecosystems to develop where they'll find this harmony and they'll be able to survive and thrive. So to provide homes for the wildlife, we can look at some of these types of plants. And so some of these are ones that you will see in some of the rain garden designs in the back. And some of them are other plants that we've used on other types of projects. So things like the Virginia iris, even though it's called the Virginia iris, it is native to Texas. It's all over here. It really likes to grow in our wetlands. So they're great in rain gardens because it likes that wet dry cycle. They flower early in the spring, but they also have their nice strappy green leaves throughout a lot of the winter to bring some interest to the gardens. The Texas star hibiscus, this one is nice. It can get up to about 6 foot tall or so and has those bright red flowers. They're very large. And so it flowers during the hottest part of the year, July, August. It's still flowering around here now. The bee balm, this is actually one of our native Texas prairie plants, but it does well in the gardens. And so it has these really cool kind of spiky purple flowers and the name bee balm. Can you guess who likes this? The bees, the pollinators like to come to this one. It's not too big, it grows kind of about this high. The Gulf Coast muhly grass, anyone familiar with this? Here pretty soon it should put on its brilliant pink show in the fall. This is actually part of the grass flowers actually. I think it's the stamens that look like that, but especially in the early morning when it has the dew on it and the sun is shining through it, it's just beautiful. And there's still some areas where there's just fields full of this that you can drive by. But it grows really well in a lot of our landscapes. Swamp rose, this is another one that does well. It's not actually a rose, it's a hibiscus, but this will grow well in our rain gardens. It's a much smaller flower, but still a nice pretty red one. This is a shrub. So all of these, I think, are perennials. So if you plant them, they'll keep coming back year after year. Another one of the hibiscus, this is the swamp rose. These flowers also, it's okay, they're dinner plates, they're big, like this. So these, and then actually this picture and this picture I just took last week. So these guys are out flowering right now, looking really nice. Does anyone know this one? The yogi berry? Yeah. So these beautiful, really striking purple berries that grow in these clusters by the leaves. Again, this time of year is when we're seeing them. They're a really important food source for a lot of the birds that live here. And it's another shrub. It can grow, depending on how happy it is, it can get pretty tall. It likes to grow in the shade also. So if you have any shady spots in your yard where you're looking for something, the beautyberry is a good option. The Turk's cap, which somebody's going to take home with you tonight. These lovely red flowers, another favorite of a lot of the pollinators. You'll get a lot of butterflies, hummingbirds. This guy's still pretty small. They can also grow fairly tall, and another shade-loving plant. These guys like the shade, but they can handle the sun too, but they like the shade. And then finally, Virginia sweetspire. This is another one of the shrubs that likes it a little bit wet. So if you're planting your rain garden, this is a good choice for that. I like it because it has these kind of spikes of white flowers on the end. And this is a shrub that doesn't get too big. It stays a little bit, it kind of behaves itself a little more than some of our other shrubs, which just go crazy. It likes to be a little bit shorter. So just to give you guys a taste of the type of flowers and plants that you might think about incorporating into your landscapes. So Selena said she's part of the gift team. These are all the folks that we have working with us and are available to help answer questions, work with cities and communities on how these types of practices can fit into your guys' visions for what a healthy, vibrant city looks like, with parks that people want to visit that help support water conservation and improve water quality and provide habitats. And this project that Selena is able to work with the city about is an important step in bringing these to your guys' city and to your parks. And so we're really excited about this opportunity to work with you. And I think I need to finish right now.
You have another 2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes if anyone has questions. Okay. If not, it's okay.
What is the big plant there?
Okay, so this one is it's okay if we're talking about it now?
Yeah.
Okay. I set the clicker down this time. Okay, so this one is an Esperanza, so it's also called yellow bells.
Yeah.
So it has yellow bell-shaped, cone-shaped flowers. So again, another one, but hummingbirds, butterflies, those types of things really enjoy. And this one,
They're real pretty.
yeah, it can get pretty tall as well. This is probably about half, I would say about half of its happy height. It'll keep going. But I've seen these planted around here in parking lots and different areas like that. It can handle, it's not a real picky plant. It can handle less than desirable planting conditions, I would say.
It's very pretty.
Yeah, but someday we can take this home tonight. Anything else? Ready for everyone?
Very informative.
Thank you, guys.
Very
I did not.
No, I don't wait.
I think we're gonna do the last two periods. Okay.
This is great already, and so it's helping a lot, hopefully, to understand. So we got a good understanding of the areas here and why we need them. We're gonna go a little bit more in detail. So if you weren't expecting it, there's gonna be science, there's gonna be math, there's gonna be STEM stuff. So get ready now. So my name is Fouad Jaber. I'm a professor and extension specialist with Princeton and Life Extension, based at the Dallas Center. So I'm faculty in the Biological and Agricultural Engineering Department of Texas A&M. But I'm actually not located there. I'm located in a center in Dallas. I'm a majority extension faculty, so I do programs like this. But I also have a research appointment, so I do research, which I'm going to show you some of today. And so Charles did a great job explaining where pollution comes from. But what I want to do here a little bit is to talk about how urbanization, how building cities is impacting water quality. So if you look here on your left, you have a natural environment, and on your right, you have a simple low density development, we call it. These are houses that have a big yard. We're not talking a downtown completely, a complete jungle, a downtown. But there's a huge difference between these two in water volume and water flow, as well as water quality. Why? So the one on the left, where you have a natural environment, when it rains, the first thing it hits is actually a canopy. In most of the environment, forested areas, or even if you have a prairie landscape, you have tall leaves covering the whole area. That rain's not going to go straight to the ground. It's going to have a leak. There's actually an amount of water that never makes it to the ground. It sticks to the leaf and then evaporates straight from the leaf. And it's usually 5 to 6 to 10% of rainfall, although in certain places in conifer forest, apparently, it can be up to 40%, especially in the Northwest, where it rains slowly, and then each of these needles have so much surface area compared to its volume that a lot of the rain gets caught on these trees and evaporates, and a little bit less than half of the rainfall annually makes it to the ground. In our areas, we have more prairie plants or trees, broadleaf trees, and as a result, 5% of that rainfall never makes it to the ground. The rest of it falls through. It's actually called through-fall rain. It goes through from the leaf to the ground, and what does it do? It hits actually either small vegetation or bare ground under the trees. And if it hasn't rained in a while, what's that water going to do? It's going to infiltrate. It starts going into the ground. And we have different soils, right, all over the US. We have sandy soils where it infiltrates fast. We have middle silt soils, and we have clayey soils where it actually flows very slow. And we're probably here in clay soils. So in either case, it's going to start infiltrating. And even in the sandy soils, I used to work in Florida before I came to Texas 17 years ago. There's always a layer, because of the weight of the soil, where it gets so compacted, including sand, that it reduces water flow a lot. And so that water is going to infiltrate, and then it's going to start slowing down and accumulate up to when it's completely saturated, and then it goes to the surface and flows. And that's what we call runoff. And in clay soils, though, because infiltration is slow from the beginning, we might get enough rainfall that it's faster than the infiltration, and we also get runoff. Either case is two different processes, one where the soils get saturated and we get runoff, one where we can't get infiltration enough and we get runoff, and then water starts flowing. But in these natural areas where we have depressions, we have soils that is not level, it's going to have to find its way around plants, around rocks, around trees, within depressions, and as it's going slower and slower, and it's infiltrating more and more, and eventually a very, very small percentage of the rainfall, on an annual basis even, makes it to the streams on the surface. The majority of that water actually eventually infiltrates in these natural systems, and it, as we said, we infiltrate, but it gets stuck actually where there's compacted layers or there's very heavy clay layers, and so some of it makes it to the groundwater, but the majority actually still moves in the ground and ends up in the same stream that runoff goes into. What's the difference? The difference is that water running off the surface, probably the whole watershed would be contributing to the stream in anywhere between 2 hours and a full day, depending on the size of the watershed. The water that infiltrates, in order for it to move toward that stream, has to fight the air in the pores of the soil and push it out. And actually, it can take anywhere between 3 weeks and sometimes 3 months for that same drop of water to make it to the river. And also, this is after these pores are filled, right? And then the extra is what's flowing. So even there's an amount of water that's get held in those pores of the soil, and so the volume of water that actually ends up in the river is a small percentage of the total rainfall, and the majority of it goes through the soil. So water volume is reduced, the flow rate is reduced, and we heard about flow rates causing erosion, so we have improvement. And also we heard about soils having bacteria that break down pollutants. And yes, so as that water is forced to go through the soil, nitrogen changes forms and it becomes nitrogen gas and goes to the atmosphere. Bacteria is actually competed out, basically. There's a natural root zone bacteria that can outcompete fecal coliforms or E. coli that is actually the polluting bacteria. So less bacteria makes it down there, and phosphorus, which is, it's found in natural areas because decomposing leaves have phosphorus. It actually sticks to these soil particles. Some of the bacteria do too. And so basically less water and much cleaner water makes it to the stream as a result of that infiltration. When we change this even to these low development, basically we build a house that is maybe a quarter of the quarter-acre lot that you have, unless you have a McMansion where actually there's like a strip of backyard and the house is most of the property. That is the new ones we're seeing. But even here, if you see, a quarter of the land is 100% impervious. You have the house, you have the back, the garage drive, you have the walkway to the front door and the road. So approximately now a quarter of the land doesn't allow any infiltration. And in many, many places in the world and in the US, the water is actually plumbed down. You have a downspout that's connected to a pipe that takes the water directly to the street to prevent it to even go into the yard and infiltrate a little bit. So we know that all the rainfall that hits the house or the driveway or the walkway or the road, this is going straight into that opening that Charis showed us in her slide and going straight to the street. So that's one already. And that water, of course, if there's anything on the concrete that's staying there, there's sediments, there's grass clippings that have all kinds of nutrients and some bacteria in it, all that's going to flow with that water and go straight to the street. Even the yard, which is the majority of that property, when the house was being constructed 10, 15, even 40 years ago, these heavy machines compact the soil continuously to build the house. And then developers have been using anywhere between 2 inches to 3 inches of topsoil, and they put turf grass on top of it. So now instead of that deep 6 feet space for big tree roots where water used to be able to be stored in the process, now you have only 2 to 3 inches. And so it will hold some of the water, but then it will allow for more runoff than usual. And so as you can see, the majority of the water goes as runoff. There's no treatment, and as a result, you're actually causing issues. Phosphorus, nitrogen, when they go to the lakes, what they do is they produce algae, right? And so because usually water, these algae do not grow in our lakes because they are limited by a nutrient. It depends on where you are. It could be nitrogen, it could be phosphorus. So they don't grow until the concentration of the limiting nutrients, which is either nitrogen or phosphorus, is reached. So if you allow this phosphorus to slowly go into these lakes where water accumulates and pollutants accumulate or nutrients accumulate, it's going to reach that threshold. And sometimes overnight, sometimes over 3 days, you start seeing more and more green stuff growing everywhere. And algae is a short-lived plant in most cases. I'm not the wetland expert here, but it reproduces and then dies. And as it dies, it's organic matter. Dying organic matter, rotting organic matter needs oxygen, so it takes the dissolved oxygen from the water, and you start losing dissolved oxygen. And what happens when you have low dissolved oxygen in the water? You get fish kills. This is in Lake Granbury, which is close to Dallas. It's southwest of Dallas, and you have all these fish kills as a result. The other problem is erosion, as we talked about, is when the rivers and streams, they form naturally, right? Where are these rivers and streams? They're usually at the low point of a valley or a watershed, wherever all the water that's uphill is going to go down the slope, and the lowest point, it's going to accumulate, and then it creates a channel for itself, right? Throughout the year, the size of that channel and its floodplain is based on the historical rainfall that falls in that area. So it's expecting a certain amount of runoff every time it rains 2 inches. This is over the past 500 years, every time it rained 2 inches, we got, 15 cubic feet per second. And so that channel erodes and changes itself to accommodate that flow. And then little by little, plants will grow on the side to guarantee its stability. And it's how rivers form in nature. When we urbanize, we're actually changing that flow. So now when we get 2 inches of rainfall, we get 3 to 4 times more flow going to the river. It widens and deepens, and that's all erosion. And that actually continues until that channel is so deep it's not connected to its floodplain and causes more and more erosion as a result. And in addition, your floodplain limit increases because more water is coming in. And so houses that are not built in the floodplain become more likely to flood. But of course, we built in floodplain too. It's like a common human activity here. But so the solution that we're talking about, of course, is that we can't stop development. People are moving, especially in Texas. We're getting thousands of people every day. And so that we have to find ways to imitate nature. What did nature do? Nature infiltrated water and treated it into soil and reduced the amount of runoff that came through rain. Not all the rain was able to get into the river like we showed. And so we're trying to imitate it within that development. And that's what green stormwater infrastructure is. These are 4 examples of classes of practices. We have rain gardens, bioretention areas. I'll talk about these in a second. We have sport pavement, we have green roof, we have rainwater harvesting. There are a few others that could fit within. There's constructed wetland. I'm going to talk a little bit about those too in a few minutes. Let's start with a rain garden. So what is a rain garden? We heard it said a couple of times. It's basically a depression that is planted. So if you do a depression wherever your house, if you look at your house, you have it rains, all the runoff comes through the downspout. If for some reason you have an irregular elevations in your backyard, you have some kind of depression, you'll notice that it might accumulate water longer. Or if not, you can see where the runoff, if you can go like chart us with the camera when it's raining, and you can see where the water is coming out of your downspout and how it's flowing, you can go and just dig down a depression in that area, put a little bit of compost in it, till it down, and put beautiful plants. You can ask our landscape architect about cigars.
He did.
Right.
He did, but he said put the input too.
There you go. So you can choose. There's a list of plants over there. You can choose a few plants. They most native plants have beautiful flowers, so it can look like this very nicely in front of your house. But actually, it's not only a beautiful garden like most of the gardens do. This is a beautiful garden that's actually functional, that treats stormwater, reduces the volume, and cleans the water. Now, there's two types of rain gardens. There's the rain garden, which is a depression basically planted, and we call that now rain garden. There's an advanced form of a rain garden, which we call bioretention area. And that's usually a designed and engineered form, so you can't probably do it in your backyard. You shouldn't, actually. It's designed to be in parking lots and medians. And basically, what we do in those, we dig down around 3 feet. We remove 3 feet of soil because it's either compacted, if it's sandy, or if it's clay, it's not going to allow for a lot of infiltration. We bring what we call an engineered mix. It's sand mixed with a little bit of compost, very fluffy, very high infiltration. And we fill in these 3 feet. We put some gravel at the bottom, and then we put that engineered mix on the top. Now when it rains, water doesn't only sit in that ponding space, that depression you made, it actually fills in all the pores in the soil. And so you're actually increasing, you're tripling sometimes the amount of water you can hold per square foot of rain garden. And so those we usually put in parking lots, and in parks, like in a few. I think that the one in League City that you showed is a bioretention. It's not a rain garden. There's a couple of designs, and we don't need to go too deep into them. Some put gravel at the bottom, and then we put a perforated pipe in there. Why? Because like here, when we have clayey soils and it rains, water will fill up this, and then it's only going to go as evaporation or infiltration. But if we have a clay soil that infiltrates at 0.1 inch per day, then it's going to drain so slowly, and we know we have rainy seasons here, right? And so it rains every other day during the whole month. And so if we don't have a perforated pipe, most of this is going to fill up, it's going to drain very slowly, and then all the consecutive rains are not going to be treated. So what we do is we put a perforated pipe in the middle, the rain comes in, fills up this is completely retained. There's nowhere that water can go but to infiltrate. And then what goes through here, it gets treated it through the soil, and then goes through a perforated pipe to the street. So some water comes out, but it's cleaner than the water without the rain garden. You can put that pipe completely at the bottom and raise it a foot, or you can put the pipe 1 foot below the bottom. They basically work a little bit, same thing. Here it gets a little bit more filtration as a result. The rain garden, as I said, is just basically a depression with a little bit of plants in it, and it works. So this is an example of a rain garden, just a depression with beautiful plants. And here's a bioretention. This is one I designed, actually. It's at the Dallas Center. If you're ever in Dallas, you want to come by, visit the AgriLife Extension Research Center. And this is in a median, you can see it. And so we have removed 3 feet of soil. We put this high infiltration soil mix, and then we put an overflow structure that if we ever get enough rain to fill it up completely, and it needs a lot, it needs 2 inches in 1 hour to fill up that fast, it would overflow into that structure over there. This is from the web, not any of my design, but it can be in the median of a road. You can see that they don't have this. This is not an elevated curve. This is actually a curve that is at level with the road, and all the roads are sloped toward the rain garden. That's the same thing in the previous one. The parking lot was sloped toward the median. So all the runoff that falls on the parking lot goes to the median, unlike a typical Walmart, Target parking lot, where actually water that falls on the median flows to the parking and goes to a stormwater structure. This is the stormwater structure. There is no manhole anywhere in that parking lot. Same thing here, it can be median of roads, and so that's basically it, bioretention, drain gardens. The second thing, and I'm going to talk about how they perform later, but we're just going through the concept. Porous pavement, we all park our cars on parking, there's concrete, we park on it, and this is actually the largest percentage of 100% impervious areas in any type of urban environment, that these parking lots, right? And so there is a way, you can either put a bioretention in their median and then treat it, or you could actually use material that allows water to go through it, and we call those pervious pavement or impermeable pavements, and there are many types of those, and so these allow water to flow through, and then they usually water goes down and settles before it overflows from it or from the side. There's usually a perforated pipe in it, but as a result of the water being slowed down and forced to infiltrate, a lot of it infiltrate, and also the sediments settle at the bottom of it, so it actually is providing a water quality treatment. There's pervious concrete, interlocking concrete pavers. There's even grass pavers that you can do, allows for grass growth, but also you can park your car on it. There's also porous asphalt. I do not have a picture of those in here. This is a typical design of a porous asphalt, because porous concrete, because porous concrete and all porous material does not allow for rebar in it. Usually we have to put a significant amount of rock beneath it. So in this case it's 8 inches and 6 inches. This is again the design. This is at the Dallas Center, so that's the design we use for that upper part. And then we had the porous concrete poured on top of it. This is an interlocking concrete pavers. These are pavers similar to all other pavers, but when you look at them, they have these small protrusions or teeth, if you want. When you put them together, there's always a 1/4 inch space in between them, and they fit perfectly. You can see they can even use the bricks to make the lines for the parking lot. Then you fill that space with pea gravel, and when it rains, water infiltrates between the pavers inside the system. Green roof is the third thing we talked about. It's basically putting vegetation on the top of your roof, so as a result, it captures the rain that falls. We said that the structure is the part that is most impervious in any house or residence area, right? And so if you convert that roof to green, it will capture the water in the soil that's there and evaporate it, and as a result, you are removing your impervious roof as contributor to the stormwater. Now, one of the things that you'll notice, these are all, except for this one, I'm not sure what they use, but are all like big buildings that have very strong foundation and are able to hold the extra weight, because when it rains, even if you have 4 inches of soil, which is most of these roofs have around 3 to 4 inches of soil, when these are wet, it's as heavy as concrete. It's like adding 4 inches of concrete on the top of your roof. So at my house, your houses probably can't handle that. So these are not for houses, but City Hall can usually. This is actually the Chicago City Hall right here, and it's actually visitable. You pay, and it's like a park. You walk around and look at. There's trails you can walk around. Smaller systems usually are reduced access, and you can just look at them from far away. Rainwater harvesting, we saw a lot of examples, but why is it a green stormwater infrastructure? One, you're getting water for conservation, for reuse, but actually if you think about it, when it's raining, most of the rain that fell on your roof that we said is problematic because it's not infiltrating, goes into a tank, and if you use it wisely a couple of weeks later and water when you need watering, or even if you just release it when it's not raining and it allow it to infiltrate, then you're actually, all that water that went into the tank is not part of that stormwater cycle as a result, and so you're improving the result, and then there's no higher flows that are capturing all these pollutants on its way to the stream and increasing pollution. So you're reducing the flow rate and you're reducing the water volume that is reaching the stream during the storm as a result. I was just going to say that I had a grant from 2010 to 2015 to test all these things, right? All what I showed you is stuff we designed or we took from online that we learned about, but do they really work? And so I got this grant to see if they really work, and I collected a lot of data. And so this was the Della Center. It's completely changed now. That building completely disappeared. There's a new building here. But we had been able to put all kinds of practices and monitor them for a couple of years. So this is the bioretention area. So it's a rain garden basically that took from the parking lot. We had a big 4-bay for it because we were limited in space. Usually rain bioretention areas are anywhere between 5 and 10% of the total watershed where water is coming from. This was around 2.5%. So we put a big 4-bay in front of it so we can reduce the amount of sediment coming in and capture it before it goes to the rain garden. But that's it. And we measured flow and water quality. And this is the reduction. This is comparing the water that went into the rain garden, which is basically the raw water coming from the parking lot, to the water that came out of the bioretention area. And so we look at here, we had around a 45% reduction in the volume. This is over a 2-year period. We had around 65% reduction in nitrate. We had around 92% reduction in orthophosphate, which is reactive phosphorus, the phosphorus that can be polluting in streams. And we had 85% reduction in sediments and around 60% reduction in E. coli. So it was very effective in reducing all the pollution and reduced the volume by nearly 50% from that parking lot. This is over a 2-year period where we measured every storm that happened unless the equipment failed, which happens a lot. This is the permeable pavement. We built actually various permeable pavement pictures. We had several permeable pavement types. We have one that was grass. We have the interlocking concrete pavers that I showed you that have a 1/4-inch space between them. We had the gravel pavers. We had that plastic grid, but we just filled it with gravel instead of grass. We had porous concrete, and we compared all those flows to a typical concrete structure. Is controlled, which is just a regular. We measured all those. The black is the control. This is the runoff. This is the rainfall on the top, how much rain came in different events. I can look at what that is on this side. And this is the runoff that came out from 5 parking spaces of each of these types. And you can see that there was significant reduction in all of the types. Actually, you have the data right here. In volume, the interlocking pavers, the pervious concrete, and the grass pavers all reduced it around 70 to 80%, and the gravel pavers reduced it by 93%. Total suspended solids, which is sediments, which is the thing that pervious concrete can't treat, because as we said, water goes in, infiltrate, sits, and sediments settle, and then water flows slowly through pervious pavement, porous pipes into the median usually. And so we had reductions of 48, 57, 48 in the non-natural material, which is pervious concrete and block pavers. The grassed one, because there was grass and it produced root systems, it actually captured even more sediments, so there was a reduction of 84%. Of course, grass pavers, these are overflow parking spaces. Football stadiums have them, and some churches have them, because you park on them, like a football stadium. There's 8 games a year for your local football team at home, and then there's a few events in the summer, usually a concert or something. But total, it's a very small amount. So you can do grass pavers, but if you park every day on the same grass pavement, you're reducing the sun exposure, your tires will make a mark on the 4 location, it wouldn't work very well. So these are good for overflow parking, but they're very effective in sediment reduction too. Green roofs, I was saying that green roofs are very hard to put on small structures because they put, and we actually, when we built that, when we got the money for that experiment, none of the building at the data center was able at the time to hold that extra weight. So we built our own roofs and we compared 3 thicknesses of soil in our systems, and we collected the runoff and the overflow into barrels and compared them. And this is a lot of data I'm going to show you right there. So we had a control which where there was no green roof. We had one soil that had 4 inches of soil. We had one that had 10 inches, and then we had one that had 12 inches. And you can see that this is actually 12 and 10. So you can see that 12 and 10 behave more or less the same way. The 4 inches also did great, right? So the difference between 4 inches and 12 inches was only 10%. That's great already. So we had very high reduction. Basically, if you put some soil and plants on your roof, or on roofs of big structures at least, you will have a high reduction in the total volume of runoff coming out of your roof. Rainwater harvesting, we also did a little experiment where we built a small 10% model. We had a 100 square foot roof, 200 square foot yard, and we put 150 gallon storage in those systems. And we collected data on that model for the couple of years, and this is what we found, is when you have what would be equivalent to a 1,500 gallon tank on collecting from 1,000 square foot of roof and watering 2,000 square foot of a yard, you will reduce your runoff by 50% as a result coming out from your property. And you have also will reduce your water use by 50%. And that is all compared to, I actually collected the irrigation schedule of my neighbor, who is who wins the competition of greenest yard in our neighborhood every time. So I looked at that guy, and he was watering at a crazy rate. He got limited now. We have rules on 2 days a week, so he reduced it. But at the time, we didn't have these restrictions. And that guy was watering every day during the summer. He dropped it down to 3 times in the spring and fall, and still once a week in the winter even. He still does irrigate once a week in the winter because it still falls within that 2-week system. But that's what we get. The last thing I want to talk about is constructed wetlands. Well, this is actually something that I started with Charles Group, and then I did a few other designs. So we constructed wetland can be just for restoring wetland. In this case, these are stormwater constructed wetland, and there was a grant that her group had to actually, instead of like these, you would think wetlands are in like big parks, you can't see them, they're on side, near trail. We actually put some in MD Anderson, put 3 of those right in the middle of urbanization. Instead of putting a rain garden, we put a constructed wetland in the system. And then eventually I got a project with the Tarrant Regional Water District. They had a detention pond that was not performing according to permit, and they got actually cited for it by the city of Fort Worth. And so we went back and we converted it to a constructed wetland. It still works as a detention pond. That can be done here everywhere. Every detention pond can have a constructed wetland at the bottom that would treat the small events. And if we get the 100-year storm, it will still capture it and slow down the water. But right now, detention pond bypass these small events. They allow the water to go through. They don't even detain it because they're under the depth of these pipes, and then they work only for bigger events. But if you can do this, it would look like this. This is a picture of the clip. This is the design I gave them. They converted it into a sign, and you can see how it's looking beautiful. They have a whole presentation on the wildlife that comes, and it's just an amazing system. We never got to monitor it. We're still looking into monitoring the system. She's actually buying ISCOs right now for it. But because I don't have my own data, I got data from the literature, and you can see this on average, it performed very well in most of the pollution as a result. with that, so now we all are expert here. This is all I know about rainstorm infrastructure, and you know as much as I do. We just I want to go through something here. Is one of the biggest problems in convincing cities to adopt green infrastructure has been. I still have time, right? So, yes. One of the biggest problems that we've seen is the cities think that these systems that look like this are very difficult to maintain. And so they just don't even start adopting such practices because they don't think that they'll be able to maintain it. And so we've been looking at what is the maintenance of rain gardens and how does it compare to a city contracting a crew that mows a median twice a week in the summer or twice a week in the spring when it's raining. I don't know how often, but at a process that is actually twice a week over 52 weeks. Maybe it's not over 52, but it can be 100 to 150 times you're mowing these medians if you just have turf grass on them. So let's look at these systems. So bioretention areas are actually low maintenance. Yes, these systems are low maintenance. We're going to talk about some of the issues that we've seen. So one of the things, number one problem is that you build it and you designed it to infiltrate and to look great, and then it rains and water just stands in there. That's usually a flaw in the design or a flaw in the protection of the system during construction. One of the biggest things we see is that sometimes, especially in big construction, let's assume this company is coming and paid for a bioretention area in the median of their parking lot while the parking lot is being constructed. And so often, as they're used to in landscaping, they do these landscape areas first because they're usually curved and high, and then they keep working on the parking lot. Well, with rain garden, that doesn't work because that's where everything goes. So they build these rain gardens and then start doing the work on the parking lot, piling the sediments on the side, the rock, and it rains and everything goes in, and by the time they're done with the parking lot, you have this much clay on the top of the bioretention area and nothing infiltrates. So that is a common problem, and so that's something that needs to be looked at in the construction sequence as a result to prevent things from happening. It's not a sediment basin. That's something that a sediment basin is a typical civil engineering practice that's actually built during construction. It's made to capture sediment during construction, and then it's cleaned up at the end of the project and they go. But this is a permanent structure with plants. We don't want to accumulate sediment as a result of the process. So again, these are the causes. We have accumulation of these systems. Sometimes if it needs a forebay and it's not maintained, accumulates sediments and then it flows in and causes sediment accumulation. And sometimes the standing is not even sediments coming in. Sometimes somebody did a complete wrong design of what the media should be in those bioretention. It's very low infiltration, so that is a problem. There are things you don't think of. Where is the sediment coming from? Like, you have to design for it. So if you have an asphalt parking lot, you probably should put a big forebay, because asphalt produces sediments by itself. It just breaks with the cars driving on it. It's actually, you can, if you have asphalt shingles on your house, you can see how much sediment comes out of those if you clean the gutters, and you can find all that black stuff in there. Same thing, that black stuff ends up in bioretention if you have an asphalt parking lot. The other thing that's interesting that was found is that when bioretention clogs, it was found that it never goes beyond 5 inches, that's 20 centimeters, around 5 inches, into the soil. So if you ever go and it's completely clogged, and it's a problem because sediments have clogged it, at least you know that you don't have to go beyond the top 5 inches, remove and replace those to make your bioretention functional again. So some of the things you can do to prevent this is, first, again, as I said, make sure that it's built at the end of a project. 2, There's maintenance tests that are done. We usually recommend a site visit within 24 hours of a 1-inch rain event. Within 24 hours, these systems are designed not to have any standing water, because that helps with mosquitoes, but also it helps if we get more storm 2 or 3 days after that storm. So we want that water to have infiltrated and gone. So if it doesn't infiltrate within 24, in some cities, they allow for 48. These are all in their regulations. Then there is a problem that needs to be looked at. And then, that test should be done at least maybe once or twice per year. Now, if you do get clogged, then we need to unclog, right? And so excavate those top 5 inches. Again, this is from the paper, and all papers are required to be in a metric system. That's why it says 5 to 20 centimeters, because it's actually from the paper. But again, 2.54 centimeter per inch. So 2.54 divided 20 divided by 2.54. That's around 7 or 8 inches. But it goes, and so 5 is a good example. So you remove these top 5 and replace them with clean media. The problem is, if you have plants, in many cases, sometimes you might be able to just allow the plants to be around, but in many cases you're going to have to remove plants and replant them. So it can be expensive, but it's avoidable. 5 minutes. Again, so the second problem that we've seen in bioretention areas is that sometimes water, where you let it go in, instead of going in and infiltrating in all of the rain garden, it creates a small channel for itself and doesn't do that. Actually goes from the inlet to the outlet through a small channel. So here's an example. Here, this is a bioretention area, but for any reason here, it created a channel for itself, and it's basically bypassing the infiltration in the bioretention area. Here's another example, and with some erosion caused by that process. This can be reduced by slowing down the water as it goes into these bioretention. So there's a curb cut with a little grass filter strip that slows down that water. You can use riprap in the process, like these people used here, that breaks down the force of the water so it doesn't create channels inside the channel, the garden. And then again, grass filter strips and 4-bays. So I showed one in the previous one. 4-bays are big rocks where water comes in. They break down the force of the water and slows it down. It actually takes some of the sediments before it overflows into the rain garden. Wetland systems too, we recommend 4-bays for those too. The third problem that we've noticed is the overflow structure can sometimes clog, and that's a problem because if it clogs, then water can back up and then you can cause flooding as a result. So you may need to make sure that it doesn't clog. The outlets, I don't know if you've seen those outlets, you can buy outlets that have a dome grate, and those would clog less. There's some that are a pipe system. You can, again, they use a trash system. You see, this is a trash collection system that prevents trash from clogging the system. This is also domed right here. This is an example of a clog system where the mulch was not double or triple shredded or hardwood, and as a result it floated and settled on the outlet. And so these are things to look for and to make sure it's maintained. And the last thing is, one of the things that people can notice, again, these are in medians of roads, on parking lots, but there's a chance that a lot of trash end up in those, and trash is polluting, might be less dangerous than these bacteria flowing in the water that you can't see, but that's what people see, and then they will talk about it. And so it needs to be removed regularly, but also good, this is what's bad about those. 4-bays are a good place where a lot of these can be captured with the angular rock, and then you can only clean the 4-bay. You don't need to dive between the plants to take care of your system as a result. Under drains, we talked about these under drains. that's the first question people usually think is a problem. Actually, there's very little evidence that under drains ever clogged in rain gardens, except in certain cases where they used the wrong type of geotextile. We actually don't advise geotextile anymore. The first designs we did all had geotextile that separated the under drain from the engineered soil, but we've noticed that these clog faster as a result, and removing an under drain is impossible. Really, you're going to have to rebuild the whole thing. So we changed that, and we now recommend an increasing size of gravel, so that where the under drain is, we have what we call number 57 stone. These are 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch rock, and then above those you put actually smaller number 78, which are smaller than half. I only have 1 minute.
No, you are fine.
And then there's number 8 stone here, which are the smallest on the top. And so now that increasing size of gravel ends up slowing down the water and not clogging. One of the things that we do for the under drain pipe to clean it is we do a clean out. So we have a connection to the pipe that is up to the top of the surface. And so if for any reason it does clog, you can pour water into this and flush it so that that under drain doesn't clog. But these have to be capped, because if you don't cap it, it would be the source of clogging of the pipe, right? And so you can see here, this is capped as a result. Plant selection, just a very fast thing, the native plants, there are a list of plants in different areas that you can use. The main thing I want to get from that is that this is a perfect bioretention or rain garden. We want it to look nice with plants and a little bit native, but we don't want it to be an Amazon forest. We need people to be able to walk around, look at it. If that plant died, somebody should be able to walk easily, pick it up, and replace it. And so there's the spacing. An open bioretention is much easier to maintain than a full bioretention. Let's just go fast here. You know, the irrigation, these plants need irrigation to establish, but once they're established, they rarely need any watering. I have a rule that I made up myself. There's no proof that it works or not, but basically in July and August, if you have 3 weeks of more than 90-degree weather in which you have less than 1/2 inch of rainfall, you irrigate. Using that rule, the bioretention that we built in 2012, we watered that 3 times in 12 years. So that's the rule I follow. The plants are all good. They go dormant a lot. Some of these plants go dormant in the summer, not the big bushes, but there's some ground covers. They go brown. That's just part of Texas weather. They're going to green up as rain comes back. So here you go. Think clean water, not lush landscape. As we call maintenance. This is the trimming here. Really, a lot of these hibiscus that she talked about that we put in rain gardens. These also, they're perennials, but they die in the winter, and you have these dead branches on the top. These needs to be actually trimmed so that new growth comes down from those. So that needs to be done once a year at least, sometimes 2 times, depending on where you are. Mulch is very important. If you choose the correct double or triple shredded mulch that you put on there, that it reduces the evaporation. That would actually help with the plants staying alive longer. It adds organic matter. Organic matter actually is active for microorganisms. It's actually also what captures heavy metals. All heavy metals were shown 95% of the reduction of heavy metals that happened in some bioretention area was all in the decomposing mulch layer, not the soil underneath, because heavy metals bind to organic matter. That's the way they get treated as a result if you have heavy metal. This is what I want to focus on. This is the typical bioretention task schedule that you can look at, and it addresses all the things that I talked about. But mostly, if you look at those, nothing is 2 times a week. Twice a year, maybe 2 to 12 times a year if you have something that needs mowing, but usually 0. If you have mulch that is, if you have heavy metal sources and you want to remove your mulch, that's again once every 2 to 3 years. Only watering is initial, and after establishment you never do it. Depending on what soil mix, you can fertilize once at the beginning and never again. I've never fertilized any of my rain gardens, but I recommend some compost in the mix. Most of the official mixes in other states, North Carolina, ban compost completely. And so as a result, they need to fertilize at the beginning because they don't have an initial source for these plants. Removing plants, do it once a year. Trash collection, that is just something that you can do monthly. But compare these practices that will come up to 14 visits to the site in a year are much less than the 150 mowing that you did. You just need to be able to explain to your maintenance crew that this is something, that this is what you do, and we can offer maintenance lectures to the field crew, explain what those are, go through what we went through here so that they understand. I've done it with the city of Dallas, I've done it with Arlington, with Fort Worth, and the staff crew, they actually completely understand what I'm talking about compared to sometimes some of their bosses that attend the same lecture in these systems. Just the fast one, permeable pavement is the system that we talked about. They need maintenance too. If you allow sediments to go into them, they can eventually clog and be impervious. But it takes a long time because the infiltration rate in some of these pervious pavement is 1,000 inches per hour. That's like 500 times any soil you will see in nature. And so even if 50% of it's clogs and it allows 500 inches per hour, you're still way better than other cases. But case in point, I had put the pervious concrete that I showed you the result of at our center, and then we had a construction project where everything was blocked and all the construction trucks drove over those. And those pervious concretes were completely blocked as a result of that. It's like not a drop of water can go through them. So it can happen eventually. But for a typical system, if you have pervious concrete, there's parking spot, indent, and they have them on the road. You just need to look at where is the water coming into these, and does it have sediments or organic matter? And so to prevent that, it's good to have sweeping every once in a while of the watershed, not just the parking spaces, and blowing of any plant debris, because these, again, decompose, they become like sediment, they are sediments actually. They're part of the TSS we calculate as sediment, and they can block these pores as a result. Sweeping is something that we do once a year, especially for parking lots. There's these trucks. This company is actually based in Waco, so it's local for Texas. Timco, they build these trucks that sweep the road, so they have these brushes that turn, but they also vacuum. So the vacuum system is perfect for the system. It sucks up all that stuff once or twice a year at the most, depending on how much sediment you expect. If you don't have a lot of trees around, once a year. If you have a lot of trees and you haven't done some of the typical stuff on a regular basis, then twice a year is recommended. There are other systems too that these people could use, but they also, there's other companies that do that. I'm not paid to advertise for them. There's other companies that do it, but I know for a fact that Timco gets contract from cities at least, so they're based in Waco, but some cities in DFW, they contract them and they don't buy the truck. If you're a small city, you can't afford to buy the truck, you can actually pay them, and they would do that twice a year. I'm pretty sure there's companies similar here in the Houston area. One of the problems with these permeable pavement is that there's soil, rocks, and then a permeable system on top of it. So a lot of times you start seeing these green things growing. You get it even in these typical pavers, because even typical pavers are a little bit permeable. But in these permeable pavers, these actually would have a lot of time grass and Some of them are rooted in the soil below, so it's hard. They're hard to pull. Or if you pull them out, you break the plant, but the root is still in there, so it grows again. So even though these are water quality treatment, if you're doing that once a year, you could use a systemic weed control. Or if you really don't like it, you can use actually vinegar, high percentage vinegar. There's available online, I don't know, 20%. There's 40% vinegar, but I heard these are industrial. They might burn your concrete as if you do it. So buy the 20% vinegar as a result, and that would be a good weed control. You can also use a flame burner. I've actually used it in a few places. Make sure you don't have a plastic system on those with that burn. But even actually concrete can ignite. So basically, you can burn the plant. It's usable on pervious concrete, but just don't keep the flame on the concrete for long enough, because you might have a burning concrete on your hand. Grass pavers, we mentioned that. These are they're for overflow parking. The Dallas Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium, had put some of those. And then 6 months later, they called the installer, which is a company right in Dallas, and they're like, it's not working. And they went, why? Like they assumed it's a parking. They treated it as a concrete parking. Grass needs to be mowed and needs to be watered. If it's on concrete, it doesn't change. If you're parking on it, it doesn't change. So you have to treat it like lawn, but then you can allow people to park on it. So that's something that people forget. Again, this is a typical permeable pavement schedule, maintenance schedule, and looking at those. But these are things that you do once every few years. Like the gravel replacement is usually once every 5 to 10 years, depending on how much gravel leaves. You can see those, but they're basically not more than 6-7 times a year. Maybe weeding is once a month at the most, but much less maintenance than you would have in the typical. And now I'm finished.
Well, we are a little bit early. I did want to go ahead and tell you thank you, everybody that came and made it here tonight. At the same time, I wanted to also thank both of the speakers, Charis York. She didn't travel as far as Fuad, but she still took time to come and contribute to the workshop, and so I wanted to thank her. Especially, I wanted to thank, I don't see him very often as he works in North Texas, but he flew in this morning, had another site visit to go to earlier today, so he's been in the car a rather long time. And so I think it's been a pretty long day for all of us. So 2 things. You have a survey or an evaluation form. If you'd be kind enough to fill it out, we'd really appreciate it. There's some pens in the back if you need a pen, and Charis can take those. There's a box to drop them in. Wanted to go ahead and do 2 more plants, if y'all are up for that. So I'm gonna let you drop them. Take them. Last 4.
3262.
6'2",
Oh yeah. Okay, so you get the Turk's cap. We're going up in size as we go. Okay, and then we'll do the 3rd one.
3268.
Hey.
Yes. So you get the big one. So that's the Esperanza.
Yeah.
And the last one.
So that's it.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, I did that before. And so I and I mean, if you have questions and you're wondering and speakers are still here, you're welcome to ask. And of course, there's
Yes.
okay, good.
Well, I was thinking about cold.
Okay, yeah, no worries.